Namaste, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. It's a big day. It's a big day that could alter the course of geopolitics, and it could have a direct impact on Bharat, ladies and gentlemen. Russia's annexation of Ukraine has now been officially ratified and certified by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's made that formal announcement where 4 regions of Ukraine, nearly 80% of the landmass, has now been annexed. Let's quickly try and understand the dynamics and the importance of this step. From Russia's point of view, Russia believes that it had to do anything that it had to try and protect its sovereignty. But from the world view and, of course, from America and Ukraine's point of view, a nation has been destroyed, and this is certainly not the way to go about things. Americans have called it nothing but a land grab. But let's look at the impact and the strategic importance of what's happened. Crimea was annexed in 2014. So this conflict has begun since 2014. Now what's happened is Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia will also have now been annexed. The declaration has been made. Let's understand the significance of this announcement today, that Russia's annexation of these territories, which have now been called parts of Russian territory and also independent regions. The reason is, ladies and gentlemen, what Russia has secured is direct access to warm waters, the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And that's why Crimea became important, to protect this interest. And there itself, Vladimir Putin had said that if NATO or the American or West moves closer towards the Russian borders and Ukraine gets involved, then clearly they will make this step, they will take this step. Why? Because largely all of Russia's trade to the rest of the world was happening through the ports here in Kherson, Mariupol and of course Odessa. So this trip that includes Zaporizhzhia with a nuclear reactor, Kherson and Luhansk and Donetsk, which also have access to the ports and this warm waters, and Crimea, Russia claims, and Vladimir Putin claims, he is securing himself. He's securing his position and Russia's position with access to warm waters and of course pushing back the NATO forces or the West forces, which have been trying to influence and trying to increase its footprint in Eastern Europe. Now this move, why is it why does it have big geostrategic implications? First up, the control of Russia's control in Ukrainian territory is about 100,000 square kilometers, 18% into Ukraine. That would fly 18% of erstwhile Ukraine, that will now fly the Russian flag. It's formal protection under the Russian army. So any more military action in these regions, now Russia will claim that if Ukraine or the Western forces or NATO gets involved, and any attack on these territories now will be a direct affront to Russia. Attack on the annexed territory to be deemed as attacks on Russia. Connects Russia directly to Crimea and more importantly, the Black Sea. It's the warm waters. Pick up the Russian the world map. Look at Russia as a huge landmass. But where is the access to waters for trade, for global trade? It's just the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Otherwise, it's all towards the North Pole and, of course, towards those parts which are difficult to navigate in the Pacific, far away from Moscow. That's the big problem for them. Control of Black Sea, access to key warm water trade route. It enables direct trade route to Europe, Asia and Africa. They don't have to go all around Southeast Asia to try and come back into Europe. And this is access into Turkey and from there into the Mediterranean. Buffer between Russia and NATO. This is what Ukraine was, and that's why Putin kept telling Ukraine, stay neutral and I'll stay back. Stay neutral and I'll stay back. But in September, there was a strategic security agreement. We'll talk about that. That was signed between Joe Biden and Vladimir Zelensky, America and Ukraine, which set the ball rolling. There's nobody justifying the war, but this is Russia's point of view, and there is an American and a world view about what's actually happening. It's a vital economic artery to Turkey and the Asian markets. It's a whole nation that, from Vladimir Putin's point of view, he's protecting Russia's interests. It's an authoritarian regime. These are hard calls. An entire nation has been reduced into debris and also now under a huge mountain of debt. And we're talking about Ukraine here. Provides powerful naval power status to Russia again. So this is the big strategic control. But what does it mean for us as a nation, and what is India's view? The India view on this entire Russian annexation move. We'll try and get multiple perspectives. We have with us a guest joining us, Indian, who is in Moscow at this point on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and that's Aarti Tikku, founder and editor-in-chief of the New Indian. She'll be joining us. I have Dr. Sergey Dvoryanov. He is the president of IDC Russia and director WHD International Board. Joining us from Moscow, and Ambassador Parthasarathi, former diplomat, also joining us. Namaste, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And we'll have Aarti Tikkuji joining us in a bit. But Dr. Dvoryanov, many believe Russia has violated all laws. The world is looking at Russia as a nation that has trampled upon another nation's rights. And this is nothing but land grab. How would you want to respond to these accusations? Because Russia believes it's done all it has to do under Vladimir Putin to protect its sovereignty and its own identity and its own interests.
Yes, my vision, not only my, but vision of all experts inside Russia and outside Russia, who knows history very well, who knows deeply history, that Russia is only one country right now, the guarantee of the peace, the global peacemaker, we can tell. Because even during the Soviet Union time, you know this very well, Soviet Union and Russia especially always support some small nation, not only in Asia, also in Africa, in different countries. And small countries, they have some, their choice, their will, national will. And that's why we can see that population of eastern part of Ukraine, they speaks Russian language. Before, that part of land belonged to Russia. If you will see, if you can make some research of the history, you know this very well. That's why Vladimir Putin did this special operation to support this population who speaks Russians and belong to Russian culture, to Russian traditions, to Russian civilization, to Russian world. And during last 8 years, all Europe and Western countries, they completely was blind. They never take care about this conflicts, about this catastrophe. And that's why from Russian side, it was a completely wisdom decision from our government to support this population. And right now, it's historical moment. I'm so proud of my country. I'm so proud that right now, all the challengers from the Western countries to all eastern part of the world, we can be in the right balance. We can be in the justice. We can support the humanity. That is most important, because it's only question to support population.
But Dr. Dvoryanov, 219 days of war. It started from 8 years from 2014, since the annexation of Crimea. But at what cost? An entire nation lies destroyed. Millions of people stand displaced in Ukraine. Russia can't say that it is only America and Vladimir Zelensky to blame, because Russia is accused of war crimes. Russia is accused of killing civilians, innocents in Bucha and so many other places. And Russia moved to control and militarily move not just at this 18%, it moved to nearly about 25-26% of Ukrainian territory. It wanted to annex far more. It has settled for this region. That's the allegation. How would you want to respond to that?
First of all, I cannot use this word annexation. Of course not. That all traditional lands of Russia come back to Russian world. That's the most important. Crimea, before, you know this very well, was given by the Nikita Khrushchev, who was a completely not predictable guy. And he gave this part of Russian civilization to Ukraine. It was especially we can see like a bomb, in the geopolitical bomb even. Right now, Vladimir Putin, he took the very nice decision, proper decision. Mainly Western countries, they wash brain of the Western population regarding this. It's not a war. It's completely, you know this very well. Who wins the Hitler? Who wins this Nazi? Russia. Who always support small nations in Africa? Russia. always we can receive only one proper answer for all the questions. Who's a big global peacemaker right now in the modern age? Russia. I'm very proud to be Russian, and I'm very proud right now that eastern part of the world population, it become more and more wisdom, and all this wash brain of the Western media not have any effect. So you should be only
Dr. Dvorinov,
sincere.
see, there is a Russian point of view which has not been spoken about, and I have been, at least here on the right stand, we've put out both points of view. There is a Western point of view and a world view of war. India very clearly does not back any kind of conflict or war that ravages a particular nation. Russia, on the other hand, believes what is NATO doing at its doorstep when there is no Warsaw, and you have to protect your strategic interests as a nation. But at what cost? But at what cost is the question, and what will be the implications? So let's go forward and let's take this discussion forward into what will be the implications. Dr. Dvorinov, please stay with me. I'm just going to bring in our other panelists and then I'll circle back to you, sir. Arti Tiku, you are in Moscow. How has this entire decision, the referendum, and how has it been, received all across Russia? Because there are reports that there is revolt in Dagestan. There are people who are upset with the referendum and also the entire recruitment drive that's happened. There are allegations that in all these regions, people have been asked to vote on gunpoint, literally. It's been forced. This referendum itself is a farce. This annexation is nothing but a land grab. And this is going to have huge ramifications globally.
Well, I was in downtown today, and what I really saw was that massive numbers of Russians came out in support of the referendum results. And clearly people in Russia, people in Moscow, and including St. Petersburg, where I did go in the last few weeks, I noticed that by and large, the majority in Russia are backing President Putin. What you are referring to is clearly the Western point of view, and they are focusing on the minority voices. They are focusing on people who disagree with President Putin, who disagree with the partial mobilization of troops. But that number is minuscule. You cannot project an entire reality of Russia on just a few people who are opposed to President Putin's stand on the issue. Apart from that, I really think that, the Western propaganda machinery, which is being lapped up by some of the Indian media, needs to really do a reality check. Because if Russia was really blowing up against President Putin, you would be seeing Russia in chaos. I don't see any chaos on the streets of Moscow or anywhere else in Russia. I don't see anarchy. I don't see the kind of media projection that the West is doing. Western media is a completely sold out, one-sided propaganda machine, which is basically pushing the narrative which is being peddled by Washington, D.C. And honestly, the only people who really are suffering are Russians and Ukrainians. The people who are benefiting is the US war machine. It is the military-industrial complex of the United States which is benefiting, and that is why, despite the fact that President Putin has come out in support of negotiations, there is no concession, and there is absolutely no interest by the West in resolving this, in bringing the two parties to the negotiating table, in bringing these two sides to a ceasefire. So I would really think that, if the Indian media is lapping up this entire Western media narrative, it's very unfortunate, because I don't see this narrative on the ground here in Moscow.
But it's a different scene. Sanjay Suri is in ground in Kyiv, and the scenes there are tragic. In this war or in this larger fight, the Ukraine as a nation stands destroyed. It's under a huge mountain of debris and also a mountain of debt, because of the entire conflict itself, and of course the amount of arms and ammunition that's been bought. Many would question the wisdom of Volodymyr Zelensky, but he's got a point of view. He's got a lot of people in Ukraine who are supporting this fight against Russia. It's all point of views, and every nation will look at it from its point of view. You are in Moscow today, and Russians are saying what we have done is right to secure our own interests. Ambassador Parthasarthi, tomorrow if there is as China moved into Galwan, India moved into protect its sovereign interests. So there would be those who would see it from the Chinese perspective. There would be those who would see it from the Indian perspective. I want to understand from the India perspective, how do we negotiate this going forward? Because we need to work both with the Western powers and of course our forever friend that is Russia.
The fact of the matter is, let's go into the first sentence of what Prime Minister Modi said to President Putin. He said, I know today's era is not an era of war. Now, that was not directed at Russia. It was almost a plea to all parties concerned to cool off and take the path of peace. Now, the fact of the matter about what is happening is that southern Ukraine, you must bear in mind, is primarily Russian population. And the Russians have had access to many of these ports, including Odessa, since the 18th century. Of the days of the Tsars. So this is the outward access. The Russians therefore took Crimea in 2014. But when the Americans came in, what they signed with the President Zelensky in September last year was provocative. It was more or less encouraging Zelensky, who has his own visions of grandeur, to take on Russia toughly. If you read that agreement, it speaks for itself. I don't have to say anything. It was a provocative agreement.
Yeah.
Now, the Russians intervened. I think, in fairness, what they had not banked on was the extent of US and European support which would pour in. They have responded. And Western Europe may soon find itself freezing, especially countries like Germany, without Russian natural gas come winter. So that is why the Prime Minister's advice, God's sake, sit down and find an agreement. Don't shout at each other. And that can only be done by dialogue. Now, coming to the problem itself at present, I think they have taken 4 cities in the south, 4 provinces in the south. But the most important were Luhansk and Donetsk. And 2 others. But now they have direct access to Crimea, to the sea where their fleet is located. You cannot deny Russia, even under any international order, access to the sea which it has enjoyed for centuries, and certainly through the Soviet era. So I go back to what Prime Minister Modi said. The Americans are enjoying this. It's Russian and Ukrainian lives, and they are sitting back and pouring in some money. The Europeans are now getting worried because they are going to face sanctions. So the best solution is for them to sit on a table, guarantee the Russians access to to Crimea. In fact, when I was there in Moscow, we used to have almost guaranteed access to Ukraine, to the ports there. So I think there is no solution to this. The Russians will dig their heels in. Unfortunately, lots of lives will be lost. The Western media will scream. The Russians will naturally be self-righteous. But the answer is dialogue. And the answer would have to be that Russia, whether it takes over or not, is different. Because they have taken over largely areas with a large Russian population. But the answer lies in finding a solution which prevents Ukraine and those who encourage it from stopping their access to the sea. their whole existence depends on that.
No,
access to the
absolutely.
Black Sea so on.
And somewhere that's the big threat to sovereignty. You talked about that agreement in September between Joe Biden and Vladimir Zelensky, or America and Ukraine, which actually said it's a strategic security partnership. Quite literally, it gave access for American warships in the guise of military exercises to come into the Black Sea. If you were to understand it, and do I interpret it wrong? Now, did that force Mr. President Putin's hand, or was there another way to go about it? 219 days of war. Did Russia want something like this, the kind of the extent to which this conflict has stretched? These are questions that remain. I just want to quickly put out the India view before we go back to Dr. Sergey. Now, this is what the Russia-Ukraine war, it is India's stand. 16th of September, Prime Minister Modi told President Putin at the SCO, today's era is not a war. We just had Ambassador Parthasarathi mention that. France and US backing India. We had the External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar at UN saying, matter of profound concern for the world. Stop hostilities, return to dialogue and diplomacy. No justification for violation of human rights and international law. There's a need for independent and objective investigations. Now, this is what India's point of view is, because human beings, civilians, innocents are caught in the crossfire. So, Dr. Sergey, does that not weigh upon Russia?
First of all, I want to say that if you have a good memory, not short memory, you can understand how many Jews, how many stones on the crown of the Queen Elizabeth was stolen from Indian treasures. And right now we can see that India becomes the fifth economy, and right now United Kingdom becomes the sixth economy of the world. It's a karma, if you believe to karma, come back to the United Kingdom and to the eastern, to the western part of the world right now. We can see is a lot of challengers, not to Russia, to Western countries. That's why that they're fighting Ukraine. Ukraine is not a question about a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You know this very well. You know who is the partnership. The most beneficial country right now in the world who take a lot of benefits from this conflict, of course, United States of America. But Europe is completely destroyed, and the United Kingdom also. You know this very well. You can see what happened with the pounds, with the currency of United Kingdom. Right now, I completely agree with the previous speaker that only one way is sit to the table and make good negotiation with a peacemaking dialogue together. But in this case, the role of the mission, we can say, of India, India can be the peacemaker, the global peacemaker. India can support UK even, support Europe, because Europe and UK, like right now, are suffering a lot because of the energy crisis, because of the destruction of the economy, everything. I can see that Mr. Modi, he's a very wisdom guy. He is following to the traditions, he's doing yoga. He is like a spiritual leader of the world. He can propose to all European leaders, to UK leaders, make a strongly negotiation to sit to the table. And right now, all Russian lands.
So, but is Russia ready to sit?
Not annexation. I completely believe to the peacemaking conversation, peacemaking dialogue.
Is Russia ready to sit at the dialogue table? Russia, see, the whole story is that it's Russia that's pushing the conflict. Is that true? Or is Russia sitting open to sitting at the table and sorting this out?
Right now,
Yes, Mr. Dvoryanov. Dr. Dvoryanov, can you hear me?
In current situation, yes, Russia bring all this our lands and protect our Russian population on the eastern part of Ukraine. Now we are happy to protect our population. We are ready for the conversation. We are ready to dialogue. But dialogue cannot be happened without the participation of other countries. If India sincerely will help to Europe, will help to Russia, we can bring peace to the Europe. I'm completely believe to this, and that role of India right now is the most important role. I believe that Narendra Modi, like a spiritual leader, can bring peace to the Europe. I believe to this.
You believe that Prime Minister Narendra Modi can play an important role. Arti Tikku, what is your assessment? Is Russia going to is it going to wave the peace card and say let's sit and talk, because now they seem to have the upper hand after this referendum and the announcement made by President Putin today?
But President Putin has also hinted that he's ready for negotiations. And if you remember what he told Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the SCO meeting, he said that he is willing to sit on the table and negotiate with President Zelensky, but it's the NATO which is not interested, which is the United States of America which is not interested in any peace. Clearly, Joe Biden administration seems to be enjoying, there is a certain, I would say, perverted pleasure that they're drawing out of the misery of Russians and Ukrainians and entire Europe. So it's really unfortunate that they are actually trying to retain the US supremacy at the cost of destruction of Europe, Ukraine and Russia. So it's quite unfortunate, but I do think that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made an effort. He still, in fact, when he did say at the SCO meeting that this is not the time for war, he was really appealing to both sides. He was appealing to NATO, he was appealing to President Putin that come and sit and talk. This is not the time to war because it's affecting the whole world. If you look at the prices of energy, if you look at the prices of food, the inflation that the developing world is seeing, or Africa is seeing, the underdeveloped world is seeing, it's all because of this ongoing war. So I don't understand who it is benefiting except for the United States of America, for which I think the only issue at hand is the US preeminence, supremacy and their own unipolar world. I think this whole battle is about retaining American unipolarity and its supremacy.
But how does America come strong out of this? And if that is the case, then shouldn't the world call out America's bluff? Why should all of Europe fall for this if it is purely just about establishing American hegemony, Ambassador Parthasarathy? Is that the only case? Why would nations want to plunge themselves into energy crisis because they buy bulk of their energy from Russia?
Look, when the Soviet Union broke up, there were bound to be territorial issues between the constituent elements. Most of them have been sorted out. Some still remain to be sorted out.
Indeed.
Now, in the case of Europe, they are playing second fiddle to America. I know for a fact the Germans just did not want to get into this business. What is the price Germany is going to pay? It's people freezing in winter. The same thing is going to happen to other parts of Europe dependent on Russian gas.
Right.
Already you've seen in the sea gas pipelines being blown up. So this is why we go back. Don't we say in Hindi, apne hi pair par kuladi nahi maro. Don't take an axe to hit your own leg. I think you sit down and talk.
Right.
Because the Russians, as I said, have a population there. They're Russian speaking, as far I've been to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they have an interest in it. But and historical access to the sea has to be guaranteed.
Right.
Beyond that, I don't think anyone in the world will agree to any Russian territorial claims, and I'm not sure they're making any.
Right.
So let's sit down
and talk.
Mr. Modi made the offer. G20, as you rightly noted, would be a good area where it could be furthered, because even Mr. Modi went to the extent of thanking the Ukrainians for looking after our students.
Correct.
So we are not into sides in this. We just want to see a return to peace.
We are on the side of peace, and somewhere it looks like now we hear what Dr. Dvoryanov is saying, that they want India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi to play a pivotal role in trying to establish peace and get everybody on the dialogue table. Well, here's a chance. Let's see what happens at G20 or even before that. I thank you. Aarti Tikkuji, Ambassador Parthasarathi, and Dr. Dvorinov. Thank you for your time and for your views. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, it's a Friday evening special. It's a great conversation with J. Sai Deepak on India, Bharat and Pakistan. Book 2 of his trilogy, tracing the origin, the thought process of our Constitution. Stay with us.